10-7 in Advanced Algebra 2. Law of signs. Law of signs, completely different than the law of cosines because sine kind of sounds like the word side. They will only give you one side length provided. As you can see in this triangle down here, it is not a right triangle, so you can't use SOHCAHTOA. They give you one side. So the law is too much information. It just says the sine of whatever this angle is over the side across from it will be equal to the sine of b over little b and the sine of c over little c. You don't need all three things. You only need two things. So when they want you to use the law of sines, you just have one side provided. I'm a fan of drawing the arrows. You know, it's like this guy's across from that guy. They want me to find the distance from J to M, though. Right? Find the distance from J to M. I'll put an X on that. I need the angle across from that. I don't have it. Right? Can I figure it out? Because all three angles in a triangle add up to 180. So let's figure out what that one should be here real quick. 107, is that what you're getting? So this guy's 107 degrees. And here's what we'll do. It's called the law of sines for a reason. You'll always use the sine function. The sine of, did you know an angle measure and a side across from it? Did you know one? Sine of 48 over 15. Remember, the angle measure always goes next to the trig function, right? So 48 was the angle measure over 15. That'll be equal to, we're looking for x, right? So sine of 107 over x. How can I solve this proportion? Cross multiply. Let's take x times the sine of 48, and that should equal 15 times the sine of 107. And then to solve for x, what would you do to solve for x? Divide by the sine of 48. X equals 15 sines of 107 over the sine of 48. Instead of having to bother with all these crazy parentheses, I just figure out the numerator first. I'm going to punch in 15 sines of 107 and just hit equals, right? Figure out that whole numerator. And what do I have to do to that bad boy? Divide by the sine of 48. And how do they ask us to round? Nearest hundredth, which is how many decimal places? T, about 19.30. Should strike a memory for you, right? Done it before. How do you know when to use it, though? That's the question. They only give you one side in this situation. So, again, it's not a right triangle. You can't use SOHCAHTOA. We won't use the law of cosines because they don't give us more than one side. They only give us one side. Law of sines. Let's set it up. What do they want us to find, though? Just say it right. How do you say that? How do you say it? The distance from D to F. So I'm going to call that x. I need the angle across from him, which I don't have, but we can figure them out. Isn't that 110 degrees right there with those two? What's left for this other bad boy? 70 degrees. And then I have the side length. I need the angle across from him also. So the sine of 50 over 21 should equal what? Sine of 70 over x. Then we cross multiply. And finally, to solve for x, get rid of that times sine of 50 by dividing by the sine of 50. And punch in. I just figure out the numerator first again. 21 sines of 70 divided by the sine of 50. About 25.76. Is that what we're getting? Let's see if it makes sense. Should it be more or less than 21? 21 was across from a 50-degree angle, correct? We found a side across from a 70-degree angle. Should it be more or less than 21? has to be more because the larger side lengths are across from the larger angles, and etc. Yeah? Find the distance from P to A. Set it up for me. And how do you know that we have to use the law of sines to do this? One side provided, and it's not a right triangle. If it was a right triangle, use SOHCAHTOA. So why don't you pause the video and get that done for me? And hopefully we got about 181.33. Whoa. Whoa. I thought angles couldn't measure more than 180 degrees. That's not an angle. That's a what? That's a side length. Cool. Next guy. Papa. Find the length of the shortest side. Well, which one's it going to be? Segment TO, segment OC, or segment CT? Which one's it going to be? Which one? How do you know that? You sure that's the smallest angle? I mean, we don't know this one. It has to be, because in a triangle, if you have acute, you know, and it's pretty sure that that other one's going to be obtuse. We need to figure it out anyway, right, because it's across from the 3.1. So I'll call this guy X. You could also call it like little c if you wanted to, since that was a big C over there, but I'm just a fan of using X. What is this angle measure? 180 minus 59 is 121 degrees. Is that what you're using? Cool. Law of sine me. Why is it law of sines? Only one side length provided, and this is not a right triangle. Set it up. Solve for X. Pause DOS video. Should have got about the old 1.18. Hey, these are a piece of cakes, right? If you can recognize that you have to use the law of sine, I mean, this is not a story problem at all. The things that are going to get us is the backside. Pictures provided for us on the backside on this guy. Read through there. Put all that information in the picture for me, por favor. Swamp. Where does the 27 go? I'll give you numbers. 1, 2, or 3. Where does the 27 go? 3, because they say the angle formed between tree A, C, and B. They're saying like angle ACB right there. That means C is the vertex. So yes, 27 degrees goes meow. Plus, I mean, it's kind of obvious this is the dry point. That's where you're measuring stuff from, right? I mean, you're not standing in the swamp or anything like that. You're standing over here. Cool, so that's where you're measuring stuff from. They knew the measure of angle ABC was 85 degrees. CZ is 1, 2, 3 right there. For all you Jackson 5 fans. They found that, oh my, how do you say that right there again? The distance from A to C is 150 feet. How far apart are the two trees? First of all, with this information, SOHCAHTOA, law of cosines or law of sines. What are we using? Yep, one side provided, not a right triangle. The distance between the two trees, well, they said A is a tree and B is a tree, so isn't this the distance between the two trees right there? I'll call that X and use the law of sines to find it. Go for it. That would be, I can use y'all, the sign, if my pen wouldn't freak out on me all the time. Poor little guy. Sine of 85 over 150 equals the sine of 27 over, jeez, please, over X. And you can solve. What are we rounding to? Did they tell us? So I just always rounded the nearest tenth then, unless it was on the previous page. Did they say do it on all of them for hundredths? Flip back. Did they say all problems, 1 through 6 or whatever? They said 1 through 4. 1 through 4. All right, tenth. What'd you get? About 68.4 feet. Now, it seems weird. This is really how they do it out in the real world, right? To figure out some of these distances, that's what surveyors do. They set up that cool little tripod type thing with the camera on it. It measures all kinds of stuff. They just shoot a laser. They put like a reflective thing on that tree, and it'll tell you, boom, 150 feet, right? Put a reflective thing on this tree, boom, you know, they can tell you that distance also. They can tell you this angle right here. It really, really happens in the real world. Now let's have some fun. Let's see if we can draw our own picture. Read it for yourself first. Two outlook towers, L and M, are 50 kilometers apart. I do this. L, M, 50 kilometers. Watching labels in case they change units on me also. Cool? There's a ranger in Tower L, Mary. Mary! She saw a fire at point C, such that the measure of angle CLM is 40 degrees. So we're pretty confident in the fact that there's going to be a triangle formed here. Here's point C. What's at point C? Fire, bad. Yes. Unfrozen caveman. No. I'll figure it out later. Measure of angle CLM is 40 degrees. Tonto, Frankenstein, and somebody else. I can't remember who it was. Fire, bad. In the ranger in Tower M, Raoul, he saw a fire such that the measure of angle CML equals 65 degrees. How far was the fire from Mary? Cool. What would you use? Why the law of sines? Only one side. So let's pause the video. And they wanted, oh, wait a minute. Before we pause the video, what distance should we find? They said, how far is the fire from who? That's very helpful of why I put their names in the picture also. Here's the fire. Here's Mary. Don't we want to call that X right there and find X? Yeah. So pause the video and find X. So hopefully it better be less than that, right? Because if that's 50 kilometers, 65, it should be close to it also, though. Across from 75, across from 65 should be pretty similar in distance. Groovy? 4 questions left. We're not going to actually do the problems. They just ask us what's the method that you would use. There are 3 methods. SOHCAHTOA, only time you could use it is when you have what? Right triangle. If the triangle has more than one side, like side, 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 or side, angle, side situation, that's law of cosines, and law of sines is when you have only one side. 7, what would you use? Just don't say that. What would you use? Law of cosines, spelled correctly. 8, what would you use? SOHCAHTOA. Could you use the law of cosines on this one? Yeah, and it's a lot more work than SOHCAHTOA is. Wouldn't you agree? 9, law of cosines, because there's more than one side provided. And 10, law of sines, because there's only one side length. And it's not a, are we sure it's not a right triangle? 72 and 15. If it was a right triangle, these two better add up to be 90 also. So 72 and 15 add up to be 90. So we cannot use the law of, or use SOHCAHTOA.